Sir, we are live to the world, sir, both Facebook and YouTube.
Very good, very good. Thank you, boss.
Sir.
Namaste and welcome to Hyderabad Democracy Forum. And today our key speaker is Dr. Anant Maganti, the Executive Director, Hyderabad Labs. And Dr. Anant, we are inviting people, limited number to webinar. Because we have connection in the YouTube and the Facebook. So majority of them are participating through the YouTube and the Facebook. And in the webinar, people are joining slowly. Okay. As usual, Hyderabadi people, if you tell 7 o'clock, they will slowly start coming and 7:15 and all. Meanwhile, we are just discussing the issue itself to keep things live. Hope that is okay with you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And the most important and my humble request to all the participants is, please subscribe the channel. You have a word called subscribe. Just you press that, and then that gives you an opportunity of recording your comments, responses, and your expressions in that, okay, in the YouTube. So we are recording all this. This gives all the participants an opportunity. Please subscribe the channel, okay? Thank you so much. Anant, Dr. Anant.
Anant Garu.
Anant.
Yes, I'm here.
I hope I am audible to...
Yes.
Today's topic, we are talking on the urban disasters. And largely the discussions in the civil society were focusing on lakes, floods, and other issues. And Hyderabad also equally, we witnessed the increased disaster in the fire accidents, most of the pubs and the multi-complexes, and then the road accidents, increased road accidents in the outer ring road, Jubilee Hills, Madhapur, and all other places. So these are also the concerns for citizens, basically. But majority are, some people are talking on the traffic system, easing of the traffic system, but most important thing is how do you minimize the accidents on the road? That's very important. And equally, 2 days back, Dr. Akhtar Ali pointed out, the lack of setback in the building constructions, which leaves enormous scope for the fire accident to spread to the neighborhood. So these are certain issues which we are looking into. And I request Dr. Anant to, speak out. And Dr. Anant has a rich experience, and he initiated his career as a journalist in Indian Express for quite some time, and went to USA and did his PhD in the field of geography, came back and established the urban labs, and doing wonderful things, the Do-Din program every year. I think last 6 years you are doing?
Yes.
Yeah, last 6 years, participation and participatory approaches in urban planning, identify the gaps in the urban planning. Now, the floor is for you, Dr. Anand, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the hosts and all the guests who are here. Let me begin by actually making a minor addition to where my career actually began. In journalism, it actually began with engineering, and engineering, a career which actually began the same year in which the Bhopal gas leak happened. So I actually ended up spending a lot of time in Bhopal immediately after the Union carbide gas leak. And that is where actually one of my lasting interest in geography came from, because one of the things that we kept asking ourselves in Bhopal was, how could lives have been saved? What happened? So obviously, of course, the issue is that people were living in places where they should not be living, or flip it around, industries were in places where they should not be. And there is a risk, there is a possibility of something going terribly wrong. And the more people live in such a place, the risk is higher. But there was another very important issue which bothered us a lot at that time, which is that when you have a toxic gas released from a particular source, it gets carried by the wind. And if people are running along with the wind, then the wind will catch up with them at some point. They had to run perpendicular to the wind to be able to get away from it. And that was something that people did not know. So the question for us was, number one, why is it that you have a particular type of pesticide which is banned across the world being manufactured on the fringes of an Indian city? One, how are those permissions given? Two, how did all of those habitations come about in such a close proximity to the place? And third, why is it that people did not know what to do in case there is something terribly going wrong? And that is what the issue of geography for me was. This was fundamentally a question of applied geography. Right? How far should a factory be from habitation? What should actually not be happening at all in any place? So it's all about places, relative locations, and the knowledges of that. Over the years, I think one of the things that I began to really Indian urban, unlike the American urban, is not a matter of someone saying that I want to be urban. In the US, actually, a small habitation can declare itself by a resolution that they want to be cities. Here, it's not like that. We do have a certain measure of the number of people. We have a measure of the density of the people, and we have then a statutory recognition of that fact of so many people living in a particular place, kind of work, all of that ultimately defining what the urban. Now, what happens in a lot of places that we call urban in India is that what used to be, to begin with, a non-urban land, agricultural land, gets converted into the urban. And that's a very important process that we need to recognize. When we generally think in terms of urbanization, think first with the idea that you become urban when a certain population limit is crossed, or when a certain density limit is crossed, or when a certain number of people get out of agriculture. But we don't pay attention to what happens to the land. That is, if so many people have stopped doing agriculture, then what happens to that land? And this is the fundamental problem for a lot of planning in Indian urban contexts. Essentially, what you have is a land that has been settled in agriculture over the last 7, 8, 9 centuries, now being very rapidly brought into an urban setting. So the way in which land, gradient of the land, the soil type, the way in which people live, everything changes very rapidly. And we don't have enough processes in place for regulating what happens in these places. So as a result, what we actually end up with is a lot of jugaad type urbanization that happens. That is, you try and figure out how to make something work. Which is the reason why when you go to the fringe of the city, you see a lot of make-do stuff that is happening in our cities. It's not fixed, it's not settled, its form is not clear. It is very malleable, it can change constantly. And that is where you have all kinds of risks spread. And this brings me to the second big question that has always bothered me about urbanization or in most of the work that I do. Number one, who takes risk and who bears the price of that risk? Who bears the cost of it? Who pays the price? Second, and very often we realize that it's actually not even possible to
Screen. I'm making you the host, okay? You're the host.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. It is not even possible for us very often to try and decide or choose or even say that analytically I know that this is the place where risk has actually been taken. So essentially what happens is that you have some kind of a process through which a calculated risk or what appears to be a calculated risk is taken. When things go wrong, the price is paid by a whole lot of other people. Now, how does that actually play out in our cities? The government decides at some point that we need a lot of industrialization in this particular area. And so you bring in industries, and industries come with whatever price, whatever demands they want to make. And when they start settling down, it's a decision that we take because we think that we need economic growth, we need employment, and so on. And the processor that they bring in may be causing a lot of hazards for people around, and we have no way of controlling it. So when something goes wrong, the people who took these decisions are not around, and people who have not taken these decisions but somehow gotten implicated in this are going to suffer. Think about our floods, think about our industrial accidents, fire accidents in construction, whatever you look at, this is of somebody somewhere taking a decision, and the price of that is being paid by somebody else when it goes wrong. And this actually brings me then to the character of what we call a disaster or risk. One of the things that we often make a mistake about is that there's a difference between a hazard and a disaster. We often tend to mix up the two. A road accident is a hazard, it is not a disaster. It's a hazard, there is risk, it shouldn't be happening, it can be mitigated, it can be brought down, we can do all kinds of things with it, but a road accident is a road accident, it's a hazard. It's a hazard involved in road transportation. Doesn't have anything at all to do with what can be called a disaster. Disaster is when something happens on a much larger scale. It may have taken a long time to build up, but when it finally happens, the disaster involves loss to a lot of people. It is often of a much higher scale, and it is often something that is unpredictable. Unpredictable simply because we have no way of knowing when something can go wrong, even though we know that there is a process by which something will go wrong at some point of time. Struggling with how to actually pin it down. The second thing that we often struggle with is that once the disaster has happened, once the risk has happened, has made a lot of people pay a price, who do you save? And I think that...
Anant, 1 second.
Yeah.
I think the name is not reflecting Galaxy M31. Please mute your mic. Galaxy M31. Thank you, sir.
Actually, I
Galaxy M31. Thank you. Thank you, Anant. You can go ahead.
Okay. So one of the biggest challenges for people who work in disaster relief work is that they have to make very difficult choices, often choices that have been forced upon them about who is to be saved. And when I say this, a lot of people in people who are on the fringes of disaster relief work get very upset. Right? They think that I'm saying something really, really scary and frightening. It is a scary situation. Imagine this situation. You have the capacity to save about 99 people, and there are 100 people. Right? You don't always know how many people you can save, but let's say that we know that We have only capacity for 99 people. We'll try and save the 100th one, but we may not be able to. Now, who will that 100th person be? Are we choosing the, or are we choosing the 100th that is not to be saved? How do you make that decision, right? We may think that this choice, we run in, we save whoever we can, we save whoever is becoming visible to us at that point of time. But no, that's not how it works. We all have preferences. We know that children have to be saved. We know that women have to be saved. We know that people who are sick have to be saved. We don't think that dogs have to be saved or kittens have to be saved. We think that they should be saved last. We make these priorities. And so, when the actual problem of dealing with disaster mitigation on the ground, rescuing people comes up, we are left with choices which have already been made by somebody else somewhere in the system a long time ago. And that's a big challenge. Now, I have just very broadly laid out the kind of problems that we have to think through when we think about disaster and risk and hazards in cities. What is the Hyderabad story? Is there a very specific kind of history and geography to risk and disaster in Hyderabad? Subbarao sir was right when he was saying that we have fire accidents taking place, we have road accidents taking place, we have floods happening, and this is something that we keep talking about at all times. There are a lot of invisible risks that we are taking. Pollution is causing a lot of pulmonary diseases. Groundwater is getting affected, which has long-term consequences. We don't have adequate epidemiological data. We really don't know what are the long-term consequences of particular localities. We don't know how many people have become permanently ill because they lived in certain types of neighborhoods. We don't know what the risk of cancer is to people. We don't know many, many things. And this on top of now challenges that are coming from extremely rapid development that is happening all around us. Think about this. We keep saying that we built the drainage system for Hyderabad 100 years ago, and that is why we now have a problem in our flooding. But between 1908 and 2000, we have not really had this kind of floods. We did have one or two, but nothing as disastrous as this. The 2000 flood was bad, and that happened immediately after one round of very intensive construction. And then every now and then, after intensive rounds of construction, we have floods. And what does that basically mean? It means to me that we now have a system that requires immediate re-engineering, and we do not have a very good clue about how to do this re-engineering. We don't know who should be the agency who should be doing that. Should it be the municipal work? Should it be the Metropolitan Development Authority's work? Should it be the state government's work? Should it be the revenue authority's work? Who should be doing this? And I think that if we can reflect a little bit on what this management of these risks would be, where should it be, what should be the institutional response mechanisms, then I think we will be able to make a little bit of progress. So let me start with what I think are the big challenges for Hyderabad city that needs to be dealt with, and where I think the possible institutional answers for this might be. Number one, I do think that regardless of all the other things that are happening, flooding is going to be a major problem for the city in the long run. Whether it is waterlogging each year, resulting in a lot of time that is lost in terms of productive time, a lot of energy that is lost in terms of pumping out the water, in terms of illnesses that the flooding brings in. In all of these terms, flooding has been and will be a major problem for this city in the coming years. And this is simply for the reason that this is a city which has been systematically climbing up onto the hills. if you look at the last 20 years of construction in the city, if you look at the satellite imagery, it's very, very density of construction has been increasing on the hills. All the high altitude areas are being occupied by construction and it's going on tremendous pace. Result of that is that we are going to have a lot of inundation of places below the hills because the drainage pattern has been completely affected. And I think in many ways, this was the situation that was actually faced in 1908, immediately after the Musi River flood, when Mokshagundam Visvesvaraya was called in to solve the problem. And I think that that moment is something that we need to think about and how people at that time conceived of the solution. They thought of this as two separate problems. First, you have the problem of flood control. Second, you have the problem of drainage of the city. The flood control issue was taken care of by building two big reservoirs. The drainage thing was dealt with by creating an extensive, and we really need to revisit that system now and think about what is the current moment, where do we and how do we need to engineer or re-engineer our entire drainage system. We keep thinking that this can be solved by simply removing some encroachments or by digging our canals a bit deeper. We can't. We just simply cannot do this because, number one, if you talk to any of the people who have been flooded this time and who are actually even now submerged under water, at this point of time, as we are speaking, easily about 1,600 houses are still underwater. One in the south in Kompelli municipality, one in the north in Kompelli municipality, and one in the south in the Jalpalli municipality. About 600 to 800 houses here, 600 to 800 houses there. Both of them on the shoulders of two big water bodies. In the north, it is Fox Sagar. In the south, it is the Shukur Sagar. Neither of them is a very deep tank. Both of those locations have received a tremendous amount of drainage and sewage, and on top of it, the rainwater in such a short time, flooding the houses. And surprise, neither of those tanks can be emptied because all our sluices are jacked. And in the command areas, we have a huge amount of construction. So we have tanks into which water, that is rainwater, to we get sewage from all of the residential areas up there, and you get the grey water, which is also water that is either pumped or pumped from at least 100 miles away from the Godavari and Krishna rivers. That water is what we are releasing into our tanks. There's no way our drainage system can actually deal with this. That means that we need to really come up with a completely new revamped drainage and flood control mechanism. And it also means that we need to think very creatively about re-engineering our water bodies. And what do I mean by that? We are looking at tanks which were engineered for supplying water for an agrarian economy, right? You have a tank on Kattamaisamma, and the Kattamaisamma is the goddess who actually looks after your harvest. That she's going to look after your agricultural operations in the coming 6 months. You have the command area under that, you have the foreshore, you have the two weirs, sluices, and then you have the surplus weir, and none of this system is actually functional anymore. It's non-functional not because we have encroachments in full tank level, which is what we keep thinking, but this entire command area is gone. There is no agriculture to begin with. When you don't have any agriculture happening there, what is an agriculture-based engineering system doing? And very seriously, most of us in the city actually thought that the agricultural engineering system is useless. So over the last 30 years, we sealed off all of the sluices in both Fox Sagar and in Shukur Sagar. People keep actually is that we are unable to open the sluices. If we can't open the sluices, the water will not go out. And the question they are asking is, How do you have into which there's water coming from outside, but there is no outlet for water to go out? How dumb can that actually be as a system? This set of issues. Then the second set of issues that we are going to be facing as a very serious problem is that in the last 30 years, we have not made any investment in helping people build their own homes. Historically, in India, and even now in many, many countries, the only way in which the actual amount of the quantity of built housing that people need has been created is by people building it themselves. It's not built by builders, it is not built by contractors providing through the market some kind of a delivery mechanism of a built house. It's built by people on tiny plots using their own investments and their own. What happens is you have an old house, that house gets then rebuilt, it gets one extended balcony, it gets one more floor, or it may be pulled down and turned into a small tiny apartment building. This is not delivered by a builder. And this, I think, is a very serious problem because we have ways of financing that kind of housing. So for the last easily 30 years, nowhere in our Indian cities, and particularly so in Hyderabad, have we pumped any money into people extending their own homes. As a result, what happens is people build on their own, they raise money from wherever they can, and they are trying to squeeze every single possible inch of floor space in that system. And that's where you get the risk because this is a system of construction and creating built stock, which is completely outside of any kind of regulation. 80 to 90% of your city's actual built environment is in some form or the other violative of some rule or the other. We can have building regularization schemes, we can have um, um, layout regularization, we can have all kinds of regularization schemes, but at the end of it, we have a very fundamental problem, which is that we are building without safety regulations, and that is because we do not recognize or understand how people actually build their homes. Even now, if you go around the city and look, the bulk of the additional housing that is coming into the city is coming through individuals building on their own. It's not coming through big builders. And if we recognize that, and if we can actually create capacities in our city to deal with that, then we can do a much better job. Otherwise, basically what happens is people are trying to make something or the other out of whatever the system is allowing them, and they will squeeze it, they will manipulate it, they will try and do something which will ultimately put themselves and everybody else at risk. This is the second problem. The third problem that we have, a very serious problem, is that this is a city which has, like many other cities, privileged, consistently repeat, it has privileged speed of mobility for people because at the end of the day, your jobs and your residences are not in any kind of coordination. Think about people in Hyderabad. So many people actually commute from Vanasthalipuram and Hayat Nagar kind of places to Miyapur. That is why you have this very strange diagonal bus routes in Hyderabad now. I mean, those of us who were born in Hyderabad and grew up in Hyderabad know that our bus route numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 8, up to number 42, they're all from Secunderabad to Charminar, Afzalganj, Mehdi, right? These are the route numbers, north to south. And then sometime in the 80s, we started getting bus route numbers like route number 20, route number 84, 86, maybe 136 that goes a little bit this way and that way. But when did we have, until the mid 90s, these diagonal routes or routes that go from east to west? That begins to happen only when Cyberabad begins to build. That begins to happen only when people have their families, their homes, their relatives, everything in Dilsukh Nagar, Hayat Nagar, Sainikpuri, Ramkrishnapuram kind of places, and their jobs in Miyapur, High Tech City, Manikonda, Jagir, places like that. And when it was built, there was not even easily available and cheap rental housing. And now you have one generation of people who are living here and go to their parents' houses in those areas over the weekends. But basically, we have a very serious problem of people having to move across the city for jobs, for medical care, for education. And this is what actually is try and make sure that motor cars can move faster. Right? So you sit and talk to any senior police officer and say, where do you have accidents? The answer is very clear. Those are places where pedestrians cannot walk the street. That's the place which is also the most dangerous for other vehicles. You take care of the pedestrian's safety and your road safety is taken care of. But this city cannot afford to take care of the pedestrian's safety for the simple reason that a pedestrian is the slowest moving creature on the road. And the slowest moving creature on the road is the least priority for the city. You need something that moves faster, something that moves people from one end to the other. And that is where we have actually been seeing so many accidents. Now, how do we change this? It's going to be a very long-term process, and somewhere we need to figure out how to take some big structural decisions. And until we manage to pull that off, of how to restructure the city, this is not going to be solved. Maybe to some extent when the government now pushes for satellite townships outside of the ring road, maybe something will get solved. I'm not very convinced. But these are decisions that have to be taken at that scale of reworking, relocating jobs. Essentially, all we need to do is to move jobs to places where people can actually live. Until we do that, we can't solve this. So what do we have now? We have talked about jobs and mobility. We have talked about the risk that you have because of flooding. Where do we have our industry? All of our Indian cities have one thing very common to them. You have a lot of small industry which is within the city. You have the Chota Karkhana. Go to the Musi River, all along the river you will find karkhanas. Go to Bholakpur, an entire municipal ward full of karkhanas. Go to Subhash Nagar in Kukatpalli, full of karkhanas. It's these karkhanas which employ 2 to 3 to 4 people at any given time is what actually holds the jobs. And the problem again, like the informal construction, is that these are places which are accumulating over a period of time. So think about what happens in Bholakpur in 2009 when the drinking water source, the pipeline, gets contaminated with sewage because of old civic infrastructure, because population pressures have increased, demand has increased, gradient has not been taken care of, and the only way in which people can actually access water is by setting up those tiny booster pumps and suck water out of the pipeline, which creates a vacuum, and that vacuum then starts sucking up the septage. And people get infected with E. coli, 10 people die. How did it happen? It didn't happen overnight. It happened over many, many years of very gradual accumulation of risk. And this is something that we are seeing everywhere in our cities. That is gradually over a period of time, it is tilting and then it collapses at some point of time. And that's what we need to again pay a lot of attention to. That is, how do we know, at what point of time do we know that this is something wrong and it needs to stop? And I keep hearing, for example, from people in Bholakpur kind of places that, look, what happens is that I know this is bad, I know this is risky, but I have to make a living, so I take a little bit of risk and I hope nobody else will cross the limit that I set for myself. But the next person thinks that, okay, so if this guy has taken a risk of 5 inches, I'm going to make it 6 inches and see, and I hope nobody will take a risk beyond 6 inches. So everybody keeps doing this incrementally, inch by inch, we get to a point where the whole thing will collapse. So how do we deal with this as a matter of governance and as a matter of risk mitigation at the city scale? I think one of the big failures in a lot of the work that we do is that we don't have the appropriate units of governance, right? For example, transportation in the city is not something that can be dealt with by the municipality. It cannot be dealt with by a single agency which provides a particular mode. It has to be dealt with by the HMDA, an institution that has the overall view of the entire region. But unfortunately, what happens is that an institution like that does not get the adequate powers. So, under the HMDA Act, you have the Chief Minister who is the chairperson of the HMDA, and then you have an IAM reports to the Urban Development Secretary. So you have two bosses. You have the Urban Development Secretary, whose boss is the Urban Development Minister, and then you have the Chief Minister. And as a result, an institution like HMDA's best shot is not to do anything, right? So we have a lot of inaction. Even though there is institutional possibility, they can't take the risk and move forward. Then you have the municipal corporation, which is a very, very fragmented body, right? I mean, if you look at what is going on in our elections, when we were a 100 seat house, it was a little manageable. Now it is 150. And then again, we have gone back to that old satellite type municipal administration system. We used to have 13 municipalities, which with one center, Hyderabad, and then 12 around it. All of them became GHMC. And now you have Kompelli, you have something else all around it. And we don't seem to be able to bring it all together. We need to think in terms of, do we need to make our municipalities smaller? Do we have to have intermediate structures in these? Can we create those institutions at this level or not? We don't know. Finally, I think this is something that Subbarao sir has actually pointed out so many times, which is that the only way we can actually deal with problems like water is by administering them, governing them by the natural boundaries. That is, you have to govern this city by watersheds and not by your political calculations. And we haven't done that in any easy way. So for us to move forward at this point of time, I think the only way we can do this is by insisting on trying to build local level knowledges, and those local level knowledges from many different organizations, from many different institutions in that neighborhood alone can actually solve this problem. And I think that a lot of that effort will have to come from civil society organizations. We already see a lot of, for a functioning, vibrant democracy, we need action and interactions of many different types at many different scales. We can't do this only at the municipal scale. And the only other thing that I think is very, very important is that at this point of time, maybe civil society must actually focus a lot more on building its own capacities so that it can engage with governments in a much better way. I think one of the best things that has happened in the last 8 months in our city is that I've actually seen a tremendous amount of energy in civil society in terms of technological capacities, in terms of ability to mobilize, in terms of trying to find local solutions for problems, even in terms of actually responding to disaster. You know, in so many places, people actually brought boats out on their own. They made rafts out of plastic drums on their own and solved the problems. And I think that that is the best of our hopes in the coming years. So I'll stop here and let's take some questions, and hope that I will also learn a lot from the rest of you. Thank you very much.
I think. Can I?
Thank you so much, Dr. Anant, for your wide spectrum and
Your,
the way you have placed the entire gamut. It's interesting to listen and understand the root causes of the problem and evolution of the problems from a transformation of peri-urban agri lands to a metro. And it not only transforms the natural resources like water and land, but also the mindset of the people. Because I had the opportunity on this particular, because you have very systematically placed the issues. So I'm taking from the peri-urban, the agricultural land transformation. I had the opportunity of studying in 1987 a small study project for the governor of Andhra Pradesh at that time. And interestingly, I could found and map the agriculture lands in Mushirabad, Kavariguda, and I was wondering why these agriculture lands are still there. So when I asked, they were, they have a legal sanctity under the protected urban agriculture.
Yes.
So Mushirabad and during the Nizam period also, that was under the hardcore municipality.
Yes.
And it was there. And today you see, multi towers there. So how it was transferred, and these are the issues. And second, my experience was, I was handling the planning of district planning of watershed for Nalgonda district. And I was arguing with the collector, then collector, that the areas like Hayat Nagar, adjoining Sarur Nagar, Maula Ali, these were the areas which should, below the Chautupal zone.
Mm-hmm.
I was not recommending any watershed projects for this. I said, sooner or later, within a decade, they become urban. But Government of India conceived it in 90s and released the funds now. Whether it is urban or peri-urban, they have to do watershed. There are certain rigid, government policies. Today, you don't find any water structure there. And from 87 to 92, there was a World Bank project in Maheshwaram, watershed. World Bank always looks
Yes.
for this, nearby an airport area, so that they can do hop, step, and jump for the money. And I monitored. I took my students there, and you see, the kind of water conservation and the groundwater recharge structures they created, the horticulture they created, everything is butchered on some kind of industrial. And industry also needs the water. Okay? But important thing is, ఇది మన మన బాలస్వామి గారు కొంచెం చిన్నగా చేసుకుంటారు మీరు ఓకే వెరీ ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ అండ్ another most important thing in my study I was asked to do, you see, okay, the land gets transformed into an urban area, but what about the skills of the people who get suddenly merged into a corporation? What kind of a livelihoods they look for? And my observation was, most of the people, the youngsters, they bought boleros and 2 kgs of gold chains around and 2 revolvers roaming around it. This happened in Delhi also,
Yes.
Gurgaon. Sudden hype among the, because the land values have gone up. So these are very important, how, all your talk, I was looking into it, is the system never focused on the evolution of urbanization in this country. And institutions like urban development authorities, HMDA or HUDA, whatever it is, across the country, do not have a multidisciplinary teams. They don't have a demographic studies to do a geographer there. They do not have a sociologist there. They do not have an hydrogeologist there. So they have a typical engineer who always looks for constructions. Though, in Delhi School of Planning and all, they give opportunity for a geologist, geographer, everybody to do the studies. But ultimately, you will not get any opportunity in the profession. So we need to change this. Urbanization is not a mere, changing from a hut to a multi-story structure. These are the things actually, how do we really, but the bigger challenge in the urban areas is retrofitting. And today, you have very clearly brought out the efforts of middle class and lower middle class in building their home. It's a dream. Okay, they get some 10,000 rupees, some kind of a bonus, or they go for one more structure. It's all in bits and pieces they go for. And today, those days, no financial institution came forward for supporting that. Yes? And today, I am totally blaming for the chaos of the urban growth today is because of the financial institutions. When I applied to buy a flat in Maheshwari complex, I was rejected by the Andhra Bank itself, stating that उस गली में fire engine नहीं जाता. I can show umpteen number of complexes where you can run from one complex to the other. Forget about, the movement of the fire engine and all. So the risk element, how we have increased it, and blindfoldly, the financial institutes started pumping money into it. You do not have setbacks even in Madhapur and Jubilee Hills. Okay, all these structures were built under the panchayat rules and all. It's very interesting to know, is the historical evolution of air pollution, water pollution, and mapping of epidemiological data, how people are suffering at different localities, okay? And how do we understand hazard versus the disaster risk? And I hope you also scan through what is called the Sandai, the statements and the risk reduction.
Yes.
Okay. The cumulative risk reductions and all. That is not happening because, even for the EIA studies for Necklace Road, for each structure you take a EIA. But what happens to the entire Necklace Road's impact? That nobody is looking at it. And finally, we can go for more personnel, but most important thing is this city was never studied properly to come out with a planning for 21st century. This city, the Bholakpur, Azamabad, Chowk, Charminar were the industrial hubs, be it a one-man show or the only big industry we had was Wazir Sultan, tobacco company. All others are single one-man shows, electroplaters, because Hyderabad is known for tools. Okay, and it promoted a lot of allied industries which can provide galvanizing, nickel plating, all that. And when the Pollution Control Board created, it never came out with a package for how do we upgrade the single man show livelihood businesses. They are not incorporated. We all point out that Bholakpur is a tannery zone. Yes, it's a traditional tannery zone. So they have violated the zoning, buffer zones, and all other things. But it's very interesting to, and yeah, it is retrofitting. How do we look into it? And retrofitting not only in the physical form and technology intervention, but also in the units of governance. What you said.
Yes.
This is most important in the retrofitting. We are just growing. Balpu, it's not strength, what I see. HMDA needs a lot of strengthening. Okay, HMDA has become a parallel institution for GHMC as a competitor in selling the layouts. Nothing else. They have not come out with any great. So, yes, I'm thanked that, I'm happy that, this local knowledge level and civil society capacities. Last 4 years, I worked with several communities. Particularly, I'm very happy to. It's my pleasure to say that one of the Bohras community who does not come, they came, they created, they fabricated a boat, cleaned the entire Hashmatpet Lake water hazard in 2015. They themselves did it. They didn't take a single pipe from the government. And they had the problem of piled up water hazard. I intervened and asked the municipal officer to clear it out. And as you rightly pointed out, I am also saying, see, today's city is not Anguta Chap. You see, go to Malkajgiri and RK Puram. I have found almost 600 retired engineers and scientists. Who worked in National Fuel Complex, ECIL, you name it, railways, NRSC. So you have, huge, knowledge potential. Apart from the local, so how do we bring these people together? And today what we are thinking is 660 square kilometers of GHMC came in each ward. Can we come out with a resource mapping of each ward? Another friend of mine is Dr. A.S.K. Nair, who was the founder member of Kerala Sahitya Parishad. He couldn't join today, but he's every day and he's in touch with us. So we are thinking of these things, to spread out 150 wards and create the civil society groups in these 150 wards, so that we can create. So that is, and I thank you so much for taking so much pain and bringing out simplifying your research work and bring it to before the people. That's most important.
Anandji,
thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Anandji, one small question to you. Now, the backdrop of Corona, the backdrop of floods, now both are teaching us a lesson. This agrarian, what you have told, has converted into urban industrialization. But Hyderabad has been bestowed with the Rangareddy district and all those districts with Golchukattu Cheruvulu, so beautifully knitted. And don't you think this agrarian economy, had they continued, this would have paved way for, now we have seen Corona. You need fresh oxygen. Now they are, in the name of industrialization, they are trying to convert even such good places like Medapalli in and around Ibrahimpatnam and Maheshwaram into pharma zones. Don't you think this agrarian, a unique pattern, economy model, could have been saved, or at least now they can work on this? Now we have even international airport having modern transport planes wherein you can easily channelize your vegetables, flowers, which Rangareddy district was very famous about. Don't you think this should be the model? We should at least now start working on that, because Corona as well as floods, both.
Yeah, no, my
health and wealth. Yep, please, sir.
No, my quick response to that is that fact, thinking about anything in policy is actually always a matter of calculating your trade-offs. You have to figure out what your trade-offs are, right? And I'm saying this because I remember organizing public hearing for family members of farmers who committed suicide in the late 90s, cotton farmers. Almost all the farmers who killed themselves, including the women, were the main heads of the family. So if a woman is the head of the family, she committed suicide, right? Almost all of them. Every one of them was actually in the age group of 35, 45, right? And that tells you something about the demographic that feels the pain. This is a person who has children who have to be married off, children who have to go to college. This is the person who has to take his mother or her mother or somebody in the family to a hospital for a surgery. So it's no surprise at all. You look at the reasons for their distress. It's medical expenses, it's marriage-related expenses, it's education-related expenses, and then you're trying to actually bring in a lot of cash through the white gold, because that's the only way in which you can actually earn the money that you need to keep the family going, right? So this requirement of families, households, needing money to go away, right? We do need to earn money. We do need to make it possible for a large number of families to make extra cash. And here is the trade-off that we need to make. Where do you want to make money? In what ways do you want to make money? How much money do you need to make to keep the system running? And if we cannot work that out, if we cannot work out that calculation, then we are going to have a lot of problems. And very often what happens in democracies like ours, and this is a really, really big challenge for anyone who makes policy, anyone who is a good politician, that essentially you don't have a society in which anybody trusts anyone else. And that's a problem. A good politician is someone who can actually bring people who don't agree with each other, people who have absolutely, opposite interests, and be able to work out that contradiction, right? And that politician, usually what has been going on is that politician tries to find an easy solution by finding people with whom he agrees or people who will agree with him, and not worry about bringing people to the table who disagree with each other and find a resolution, right? We say that, the sign of a good leader is to find an answer to a contradiction. Without contradiction, where do you go? So someone says that we need to have pharma. Someone says that, no, we need to continue with agriculture here. And somebody will have to be there who says, I will trust both of you. Both of you will have to trust me, sit down and work this out. How much pharma, where, how will these two work with each other, and where will they be undermining each other? If you don't work that out, then what happens is you will have one place where all agriculture is completely destroyed by farming. And we have no way of dealing with that. And we keep thinking that it's okay because agriculture can then go away somewhere else. What are we doing? We're basically finding an easy way out whereby we are pushing our prices to somewhere else. And this is the characteristic of a lot of our politics, which is that we displace our crisis. We don't take our crisis head on. How do you live in a city without a crisis? Of course, you're going to have crisis. Of course, you have to have people moving for jobs and people have to cross the road. You have to find a way of making both of the reason why this doesn't happen very well in our society is that these are actually fundamentally not very open societies. We keep talking about openness and democracy, but we are fundamentally not a very open society. We are a society of inequalities. We are a society of a lot of different kinds. Don't know how to talk to each other. So I really seriously believe that one of the most fundamental tasks of reworking democracy is to keep teaching people, is to keep insisting that you need to learn to talk to each other much better.
To say democracy and environment should go together. Thank you.
They have to, right?
It's part of the, you see, democracy and environment cannot be isolated. You see, three things which important things came out from Shiv Prasad Reddy's question and the answer from Dr. Anand. One is the how do we look at and address the interest of conflict? Okay, and how do we create conducive environments for coexistence? Okay, you have a lot of planning rules and regulations, zoning and all other things, okay? And primarily these two things are the fundamental responsibilities of the planning department. If they cannot find it, they have to search and outsource this exercise to someone in the civil society who is speaking. As rightly pointed out by Dr. Anand, it is only the contradiction that gives you a lead for the solution.
Yes.
This దౌర్భాగ్యం ఏమిటి అని అంటే భారతదేశం తర్కశాస్త్రం మీద పెరిగింది. తర్కశాస్త్రంలో ప్రశ్నించడమే ముఖ్యం. నేను ప్రశ్నించకపోతే అవతల వాడు ఆలోచన చెయ్యడు. ఈరోజు ఏమైపోయిందంటే నేను ప్రశ్నించింది వాడి నోరు మూయించడానికి అనుకుంటున్నాడు, కాదు వాడి మెదడు తెరిపించడానికి నేను ప్రశ్నిస్తాను. అది మందబుద్ధి కావడంతో ఈరోజు మన తర్కశాస్త్రం చచ్చిపోయింది. మన ఎడ్యుకేషన్ సిస్టంలోనే దేర్ ఇస్ లాజిక్ సైన్స్. పీపుల్ ఆర్ నాట్ లుకింగ్ ఇన్ టు ఇట్. హౌ డు ఐ లెర్న్? ఈరోజు ఏదైతున్నా బయట సొసైటీలో డిబేటు, వాడు నన్ను అడుగుతాడా, వీడు నిన్ను అడుగుతాడా, ఎవడు అడగకపోతే అసలు ఆన్సర్సే రావు నాయన. అవి రావాలా, అవసరం. దట్ ఈస్ ఫండమెంటల్లీ ద డ్యూటీ ఆఫ్ ది ప్లానింగ్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్. అండ్ ఇది చేస్తున్నది ఏంటి, బయోడైవర్సిటీలో మనం ద నేచర్ ఈస్ టీచింగ్ అస్ ది ఆర్ట్ ఆఫ్ కోఎగ్జిస్టెన్స్.
భిన్నత్వంలో ఏకత్వం.
అంతెందుకు, ఒక బర్రె పోతూ ఉంటే దాని మీద గుడిపిట్ట కూర్చుంటుంది. బర్రె మీద ఉన్న పేన్లు తినడానికి అది దాన్ని పొడుచుకొని బర్రెని తిన్నది అది. సో ఆ కోఎగ్జిస్టెన్స్ అన్నది మనం అర్థం చేసుకోవాలి. మనం పిల్లలకు కూడా ఎట్లా చెప్పగలుగుతాము అన్నది ఇది చేయాలి. కానీ బయోడైవర్సిటీని దాన్ని ఏదో హైప్ చేసేసి అదేదో పెద్ద సైన్స్ అని అట్లా పోవడం. Cities are, culturally diversified societies. Okay, right. Thank you. Anybody, sir? Anybody? Anything? I have some interesting photographs actually.
Please share that.
Show and if
please share it, sir. Please share it. Slides and photographs. You should start doing that.
నన్ను మళ్ళీ హోస్ట్ చేశారా మీరు?
చేయలేదు. I'll have to do it. How do I do that?
Anybody?
You just come out of it, Anant garu. You just come out of it so that it will come back to Subbarao garu.
How do I come out of it?
మీ దగ్గర హోస్ట్ కాలం ఉంటుంది కదా, యు ఆర్ హోస్ట్ కదా, డస్ ఇట్ షో? ఆ హోస్ట్ దగ్గర పోయి క్లిక్ చేయండి, డిసేబుల్ దట్.
There that is. Yes, I am here. Correct.
Okay.
Did you disable it so that it will go back to Subbarao garu?
It says mute. I can only mute myself.
ఇది అనంతయ్య. రెండోది
మీ దగ్గర చూడండి సుబ్బారావు గారు, మీ దగ్గరనే ఉండొచ్చు.
I've done it.
ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
మీరే సుబ్బారావు గారు వచ్చేసింది. మీరు రోజు ఆ స్లైడ్స్ ఫోటోగ్రాఫ్స్ స్టార్ట్ చేయండి సార్. అంత రిచ్ అంతా పెట్టుకొని మీ దగ్గర పెట్టుకోకండి అని బయటికి ఇవ్వండి.
ఇది డైరెక్ట్ స్క్రీన్కి వెళ్ళిపోతుందో?
స్క్రీన్ మీద స్క్రీన్ మీద చేసిన తర్వాత ఇంట్లోకి వెళ్ళాలి.
షేర్ స్క్రీన్
ఇది అదే అది ఇదే ఇది.
షేర్ స్క్రీన్ అనండి సార్, వచ్చేస్తుంది. రైట్.
ఓకే, గాట్ ఇట్?
ఎస్ సార్, ఎస్ సార్, ఎస్ సార్,
ఎస్.
ఎస్. యూ కీప్ ఆన్ ఎక్స్ప్లెయినింగ్.
ఓకే, ఐఎమ్ జస్ట్ అంటే జస్ట్ గివ్ అన్ ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ థింగ్స్. ఇది వాల్వో బస్. అసలు ట్రాన్స్పోర్ట్ సిస్టంలో మనకి ఎటువంటి 40 మంది ఎంతమందో చచ్చిపోయినారు.
అవును.
ఓకే, ఇండస్ట్రియల్ ఇవాళ కూడా ఒక ఇండస్ట్రియల్ ఏరియాలో ఫైర్ యాక్సిడెంట్ జరిగింది. నాచారం, జీడిమెట్ల, మనకి కొద్దిపాటి వర్షానికి కాంపౌండ్ వాళ్ళు కూలి పడిపోవడం కన్స్ట్రక్షన్ సైట్స్లో ఇది కూడా మామూలు అయిపోయింది. మరి ఈ బాధ్యతలన్నీ మున్సిపాలిటీలో ఎవరు తీసుకుంటారు? ఓల్డ్ బిల్డింగ్స్ని ఇది ఇంకా ఎంతో కాలం ఉంటుంది, దీన్ని ఇవాళ డిమాలిష్ చేయాలి అన్న రూల్స్ కూడా ఎవరు ఫామ్ చేస్తారు? అది ఫైర్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్కి వెళ్తుంది. ఫైర్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్లో బిల్డింగ్ స్ట్రెంత్ ఎట్లా అసెస్ చేస్తాడు వాడు? ఇవన్నీ కూడా సమస్యలే మనకి. ఇది మొన్న వచ్చిన ఫ్లడ్ దీంట్లో మనకేమైపోయింది, ఎంతైతే ప్రభుత్వం 5,000 కోట్లు 6,000 కోట్లు అంటున్నదో 3,000 కోట్లు వ్యక్తిగత స్థాయిలోనే లాస్ వచ్చింది. నా కార్ పాడైపోయింది, నా ఇంట్లో ఫర్నిచర్ పాడైపోయింది, నా ఫ్రిడ్జ్ పాడైపోయింది. ఇవన్నింటినీ కూడా మనం ఏ విధంగా చూడగలుగుతాము? ఎటువంటి యాక్సిడెంట్స్, ఫ్లైఓవర్స్ పైన కూడా యాక్సిడెంట్స్ అయినాయి. 2016 ఫ్లైఓవర్లో 1.5 ఫుట్ నిలిచి ఉన్న ఫ్లైఓవర్ది వీడియో కూడా ఉన్నది. ఫ్లైఓవర్ పైన నీళ్ళు ఎట్లా నిలుస్తాయండి అటు ఇటు స్లోప్ ఉండగా కూడా? అంటే ఎంత దౌర్భాగ్యమైన కన్స్ట్రక్షన్ మెయింటెనెన్స్. మన దగ్గర కన్స్ట్రక్షన్స్ బాగా జరుగుతాయి, O&Mఏ మనం చాలా పట్టించుకోం మనం. ఎందుకంటే మా ఆఫీసర్లు ఐఏఎస్ ఆఫీసర్లు అడుగుతారు, ఏం తెలుసా, నో రావు, గివ్ మీ ఫ్రీ O&M టెక్నాలజీ. ఫ్రీ O&M ఎక్కడుందండి? నువ్వు స్నానం చేసుకోకుండా జీవితాంతం ఉంటావా? ఆపరేషన్ మెయింటెనెన్స్ అన్నది అది రెగ్యులర్గా జరగాల. అది దాని అవసరం. దాన్ని ఎట్లా నువ్వు తీసుకురాగలుగుతావు, దాని ద్వారా ఎంత ఉద్యోగం నువ్వు క్రియేట్ చేయగలుగుతావు అన్నది అది ఛాలెంజ్. ప్లానింగ్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ ఊరికే కూర్చొని ఎవడో చెప్పింది ప్లాన్ చేసేస్తే అది కాదు కదా. సో వీ హ్యావ్ టు థింక్ ఆఫ్ మెనీ అదర్ థింగ్. ఫైర్ యాక్సిడెంట్ ఎంతవరకు ఉన్నాయండి? ఎక్కడా ఏది లేదు అసలు మన దగ్గర. ఇగో ఈ 2 బిల్డింగ్లకు మధ్య సెట్ బ్యాక్ ఎంత ఉంది అసలు? అంటే సెట్ బ్యాక్ ఒక 300 స్క్వేర్ యార్డ్ బిల్డింగ్కి ఒకటే, 1000 స్క్వేర్ యార్డ్స్లో కట్టుకున్న బిల్డింగ్ మధ్య సెట్ బ్యాక్ ఒకటే అంటే దానికి ఎట్లా? ఎన్ష్యూర్ ది మూవ్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ వాటర్ అండ్ ఎయిర్. దిస్ ఈజ్ వాట్స్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ అవర్ హైదరాబాద్. ఈసారి ఎందుకో మరి జూ ఎదురు రాలేదు. దిస్ వాజ్ ద పిక్చర్ ఆఫ్ 2016 నెహ్రూ జూలాజికల్ పార్క్. ఓకే, అండ్ దిస్ ఈజ్ ధర్ని కాలనీ. అండ్ ఈరోజు కూడా అనంత్ గారు చెప్పినట్టుగా 2 ప్రాంతాల్లో, ఒకటి గుర్రం చెరువు దగ్గర, జల్పల్లి చెరువు దగ్గర, రెండోది ఇటు మన నార్త్ కోంపల్లి, 4వది నదీం చెరువు. ఇంకా నీళ్లు నిలిచే ఉన్నాయి. ఏమవుతుంది? ఎపిడమిక్స్ స్ప్రెడ్ కావడానికి చాలా అవకాశం వస్తుంది. ఇంకొకటి చాలా పెద్ద మన కంటికి కనబడని డిసాస్టర్స్ ఏమున్నాయి అని అంటే, చాలా మటుకు గార్బేజ్ డంప్ యార్డ్స్ని అన్లైన్డ్లోనే మనం కప్పిపెట్టాం. ఆటోనగర్ ఏది వనస్థలపురం దగ్గర చుట్టూరుగా ఒక 5 స్క్వేర్ కిలోమీటర్స్లో హయ్యెస్ట్ మైక్రోబియల్ కంటామినేషన్ ఉందని NIN 92-93లోనే చెప్పింది. ఈ గార్బేజ్ డంప్ యార్డ్ మూసేయాలంటే మట్టి తెచ్చి పైన పోస్తాడు, కింద లీచింగ్ అయితే జరుగుతూనే ఉంటుంది. సో హౌ డు వి లుక్ ఆల్ దీస్ థింగ్? దిస్ ఈజ్ ద స్టోరీ ఆఫ్ ఏ హైలీ కెమికల్లీ కంటామినేటెడ్ లేక్. ఇప్పుడు ఈ ప్రాంతం పెద్ద రియల్ ఎస్టేట్ తెలుసా, ఏది కూడా శుభ్రపరచలే. ఐ విల్ షో యూ దాట్. యు సీ ఈ చెరువులో మాకు మొత్తం కెమిస్ట్రీ దొరికింది. సుప్రీంకోర్టు ఆర్డర్ ఇచ్చినందుకు నా ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్ చేసుకోవడానికి నాకు పర్మిషన్ వచ్చింది. కంప్లీట్ పీరియాడిక్ టేబుల్ కెమిస్ట్రీ ఈజ్ అవైలబుల్ ఇన్ దిస్. అండ్ ఐ షో యూ వెరీ స్కేరీ థింగ్. దిస్ ఈజ్ ది హైడ్రోకార్బన్ స్లడ్జ్. మీరు వెనక వైపు బిల్డింగులు చూస్తున్నారా? ఇది బొలారం ఇండస్ట్రియల్ ఏరియా, ఫార్మస్యూటికల్ ఏరియా, డాక్టర్ రెడ్డి ల్యాబ్స్, అరబిందో ల్యాబ్స్ ఎన్నో ఉన్నాయి. మొదటి దశలో వాళ్ళు ఏం వదిలినారో ఏం చేసినారో తెలియదు. ఇలాంటి చెరువులు నేను చూపిస్తా. గొలుసుకట్టు చెరువు విధానంలో అది ఫ్లడ్ కంట్రోల్ చేస్తుంది, పొల్యూషన్ని స్ప్రెడ్ కూడా చేయగలదు. ఇది ఎలా వాడాలి అన్న దానికి some other time I will. This is equal to Dr. Anant.
Yes, I'm here.
Dr. Anant, this is the the sludge in the Asanikunta lake, which I did experiment in 2003. This I took it to the National Building Council research materials, and this particular material is as equal to a degraded bitumen, which can be utilized as a road strengthening material. But unfortunately, దీనికి CSR ల్యాబ్స్ ముందుకు రావు ఎక్స్పెరిమెంట్స్ చేయడానికి. మనలాంటి వాళ్ళు ద లాస్ ఆఫ్ ప్రొడక్టివ్ అగ్రికల్చర్ ల్యాండ్ 750 hectares, నాన్ పొల్యూటెడ్ లేక్స్ 14. ఇప్పుడు చూపిస్తాను. క్యాపిటల్ రెవెన్యూ లాస్ 1.25 million, రికరింగ్ లాస్ సంథింగ్, రెవెన్యూ లాస్ ఫ్రమ్ ఫిషరీస్. నేను చూపించే గొలుసుకట్టు చెరువులు ఇది మన హైదరాబాద్ ది టోటల్ డ్రైనేజ్ సిస్టమ్. ఉస్మాన్ సాగర్, హిమాయత్ సాగర్, మీరాలం ట్యాంక్, హుసేన్ సాగర్. ఓకే, సో యూ హ్యావ్ బ్యూటిఫుల్. దిస్ ఈస్ టేకెన్ బై డెవలప్డ్ బై మన అసలు యాక్చువల్గా నేషనల్ రిమోట్ సెన్సింగ్ ఏజెన్సీ, స్టేట్ రిమోట్ సెన్సింగ్ ఏజెన్సీ కోసము. And all the red patches are green. 1984 map ఇది. Also have the graphical. అన్నిటికన్నా ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ చూపిస్తున్నాను నేను. దిస్ ఈస్ ద లేక్, కాముని లేక్, శంషాబాద్. దిస్ ఈస్ ద వెల్, దిస్ ఈస్ ద ఎంటైర్ లేక్. దిస్ ఈస్ ఆన్ ద హైవే రీచింగ్ టు ఎయిర్పోర్ట్. దిస్ ఈస్ ద ఫిల్టర్ బెడ్. Till 2010, this was supplying drinking water to Shamshabad village. Can you imagine? The moment airport came, Shamshabad people said, we want Godavari, we want Ganga. So, మన దగ్గర ఎన్నో చెరువులు ఉన్నాయి యాక్చువల్గా డ్రింకింగ్ వాటర్ సోర్సెస్ కింద. మనం ఈవెన్ సరూర్ నగర్ వాజ్ దేర్. ఐ కుడెంట్ గెట్ ది పిక్చర్స్. ఇది 2008, 2009లలో నేను వెళ్ళేవాడిని కనుక నేను ఇది తీసుకురాగలిగినాను. ఎన్నిటినో రివైవ్ చేయొచ్చు. ఈరోజే మరి అంటున్నారు 100 ఏళ్ల తర్వాత నేను 2 కట్టుకొని సంతోషిస్తామా, మేము 3వది కడుతున్నాము శంషాబాద్ దగ్గర, షామీర్పేట దగ్గర అన్నారు. ఉన్న రెండింటిని ముందు బాగుపరుచుకుంటే 3 కాదు 100 చేసుకోవచ్చు. ఏదైనా వినాలా? దిస్ ఈజ్ 1922 పిక్చర్ of Hussain Sagar. This is Hussain Sagar. This is Tank Bund. This is Indira Park. This is Bible House. This circle. You see how systematic the Secunderabad area was. Lanes, by-lanes. ఎవరన్నారు అసలు హైదరాబాద్ సరైన టౌన్ ప్లానింగ్ లేదు అన్నారు? చెడగొట్టింది మనం పాలకులే. దానికి తోడు ప్రజలు కూడా దీనికి సహకరించారు చెడగొట్టడంలో. దాంట్లో ప్రజల్ని మనం ఏం నెత్తి మీద వీ హ్యాడ్ 14 gardens ఆల్ అలాంగ్ ది మూసీ. 14 gardens. దిస్ ఈజ్ నియర్ ది Purana Pool. This was. And courtesy to my friend who is the grandson of ఎవరన్నా మన photographer, Deendayal's grandson. He was a close friend of mine who gifted me these pictures. ఈ గార్డెన్లో సివిల్ సొసైటీ నుంచి గుర్తింపబడ్డ ప్రముఖ వ్యక్తులకి సన్మానం చేసేవారు. 14 గార్డెన్స్ ఉంటాయి. ఒక గార్డెను నారాయణగూడ చౌరస్తాలో ఉంది, నారాయణగూడ నాలా. అండ్ ఎవ్రీ గార్డెన్ హ్యాడ్ పబ్లిక్ అడ్రసింగ్ సిస్టమ్, ఇలాఖాయే ఖబరే, 6 o'clock evening news. People used to gather there. You created a filthy things in the water body. People don't go there. Objective ఏముండాలంటే how I can make people come to the near the water bodies. Make the water bodies like. Okay. Can anybody, sir? Anna Purushottam Reddy. Anna Purushottam Reddy garu.
సీనియర్స్ ఉన్నారు. హలో,
ఈ గేటు
సీనియర్స్ ఉన్నారు.
ఈ గేటు మనం అంత కష్టపడక్కర్లేదు. ఇది మన పబ్లిక్ గార్డెన్ సార్, పబ్లిక్ గార్డెన్ గేట్, ఒరిజినల్ గేట్. సో ఇదే బాగే ఆమ్ అంటుండేది పబ్లిక్ గార్డెన్. అండ్ ఈ గార్డెన్లో కూడా బిల్డింగ్లు కట్టేసి దీన్ని నాశనం అయింది. అసలు దిస్ ఈస్ ది మలక్పేట్ రేస్ కోర్స్. నౌ ద రియల్ ఎస్టేట్ పీపుల్ హ్యావ్ అన్ ఐ ఆన్ దిస్ ల్యాండ్. Huge lung space. Can we protect this? Make this a public park? It's a big challenge. మళ్ళా మనం అంత ఓపెన్ ల్యాండ్ క్రియేట్ చేసుకోలేము. ఇక్కడ రేస్ కోర్స్ వద్దు అంటే ఎక్కడికన్నా పోండి, కానీ ఈ రేస్ కోర్స్కి బిల్డింగ్లకి ఇవ్వక. This is how I did mapping, Anant.
Yes.
This is the Manjira Basin from Miapur down the industrial area. 14 lakes, the Golskat Lake. And ఇవే గొలుసుకట్ లేకులు ఇండస్ట్రియల్ ఇచ్చిన తర్వాత you see some of them are highly polluted, some of them are partially polluted, some of them are not polluted. 2004 I did this mapping, and because ఒక ఇంప్రెషన్ ఏముండింది అని అంటే ఈ బేసిన్ అంతా కూడా పొల్యూటెడ్ లేక్సే. ఇక్కడ లేక్స్లో పొల్యూట్ కానీ కూడా ఉన్నాయండి. గొలుసుకట్లో మళ్ళీ సబ్ బేసిన్స్ కింద అవుతాయి అని పూర్ణచంద్రారెడ్డి గారు కలెక్టర్, ఆయన ఛాలెంజ్ చేశారు. నువ్వు నాకు అలాంటివి చూపిస్తే నేను మీరు అండర్లో నేను వాటిని పునరుద్ధరిస్తాను. ఐ హ్యావ్ షోన్ హిమ్ ది నాన్ పొల్యూటెడ్ లేక్స్ and he immediately adopted for restoration of those water bodies in 2004. So you need a local level mapping. We are all doing, the government is working on assumptions. So how do we see the dynamics of water? A link etuvaipu unnadi annadi. Now I am doing I already did the preliminary work for the entire Musi basin. So I am coming out similar digital elevation maps of other basins. Okay. This is only for nothing much. Okay, thank you. So this is all about how a small exercise what I was doing, and interestingly there are several other I will share. శివప్రసాద్ రెడ్డి గారు కొన్ని ప్రాంతాల్లో పొల్యూట్ అయిన గ్రౌండ్ వాటర్ తోటి ఐస్ బ్లాక్స్ కూడా చేసి అమ్ముతారు. ఐ కెన్ షో యూ దాట్.
చూడాలి సార్, అన్ని చూపించాలి. ఇటు ఇంత పెట్టుకొని ట్రెషర్ పబ్లిక్
ఓకే
అర్థమవుతుంది.
డిసాస్టర్స్ అన్నవి అర్బన్ ఏరియాస్లో ఏమవుతున్నాయంటే అవి మన కంటికి కనబడకుండానే అవి చాప కింద నీరులాగా వస్తున్నాయి. ఎప్పుడు ఏమవుతుంది తెలియదు. హై డెన్సిటీ లివింగ్ లైక్ కుకుట్పల్లి, 1 lakh people live in 1 square kilometer. Can you imagine that? Whereas the national standard is 20 square meters per capita. Hyderabad is 0.05 square meters. You can't imagine. ఎపిడమిక్ ఏదైనా బ్రేక్ అయితే మనం మొండి వాళ్ళం కనుక కోవిడ్లో బతికినాము, లేకపోతే ఎప్పుడో పిట్టల్లా లేచిపోయాం. ఓకే, సో బట్ సిటీస్ ఆర్ టైమ్ బాంబ్స్. any day, any minute, any epidemic may burst and create a higher disaster. And it happened during the floods. And floods, its impact will continue for some more days. We do not know what kind of diseases people get affected. Thank you so much, Anant and other friends who joined today. And anything anybody would like to share or discuss, we have some time. Anna, I leave the floor to Professor Purushottam Reddy.
రాజ్ బాబు గారు
For a wave.
ఎస్ సార్.
సార్ మీరేమన్నా మీరు చెప్పండి సార్.
ఇప్పుడు సుబ్బారావు గారు చెప్పినట్టే ఈ అన్కంటామినేటెడ్ లేక్స్ ఏవే ఉన్నాయో వాటి మీద దృష్టి సారించడం, అది హైలైట్ చేయడం అనేది ముఖ్యమైన అంశంగా కనిపిస్తుంది. సో దట్ ఇస్ వేర్ ఆ ఏరియాలో ఉన్న వాళ్ళకి యూటిలిటీలోకి తీసుకురావాలి. ఆ చెరువు తీసుకురాకపోతే ఇప్పుడు మనం చూస్తేనే కదా రాబోయే జిల్లాలో ఉన్న ఈ కన్స్ట్రక్షన్ ప్రతిదీ ఇప్పుడు పాలిటీషియన్స్ కి డెవలప్మెంట్ అంటే ఏమైందంటే ఎవరికి వాళ్ళకి తెలిసిన కాంట్రాక్టర్లకి ఫ్లైఓవర్ ఇచ్చేయడం, అది ఇచ్చేయడం. అసలు ఫ్లైఓవర్ పైకి వెళ్ళడానికి అప్రోచ్ అయ్యే రోడ్లే ఎంతో గుంతలుగా ఉంటున్నాయి. పై రోడ్స్ ఇక్కడ ఎవరు పూడ్చరు, వేసినా కూడా అది మళ్ళా ఒక్క వర్షానికి పోయేటట్టు వేస్తున్నారు. స్టాండర్డైజేషన్ ఏంటి? దానికి ఈ హైదరాబాద్ డెమోక్రసీ ఫోరంలో ఉన్న వాళ్ళు మనం ఎలాగ వాటిని ఆ రోడ్లు వేసేటప్పుడు వాళ్ళ క్వాలిటీ, అది సస్టైనబిలిటీ ఆఫ్ ద ట్రాఫిక్, ఆ ఇంపాక్ట్ ఏమైనా మెయింటైన్ చేస్తున్నారా, వాళ్ళు వేసే ఒక క్వాలిటీ మెటీరియల్ ఏంటి, దాన్ని ఎవరు, మనం వాటిని ఎలా మెరుగుపరచవచ్చు, అది ఒక పాయింట్ మనం అబ్జర్వేషన్ పెట్టుకోవాలి. ఎందుకంటే వాళ్ళు వేసే 2 నెలలకే పోతుంది రోడ్డు. అంటే కాగితాలు చూపెడతారు, మేము 5,000 కోట్లు ఖర్చు పెట్టాం. ఇట్ ఈస్ ఐ డోంట్ నో ఇట్స్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ సిన్స్ నేను హైదరాబాద్ పుట్టాను 1954. నేను గలీలు చూసాను, చిక్కపల్లి, మన అక్కడ ఆ స్లష్ అంతా అక్కడ మేము పిట్టలు బ్యాటరీ చేసేవాళ్ళం. లో ట్యాంక్ లో ఆ స్లష్ ఏరియాలో పిట్టలు కొట్టేవాళ్ళం మేము, ఎయిర్ రైఫిల్స్ తీసుకెళ్ళి. సో అవన్నీ ఇప్పుడు చెప్పినట్టు అర్బన్ ఫార్మింగ్ కాస్త అదంతా ఇల్లు వచ్చేసి we're not instead of sitting idle, we should have some strong voice to raise at least. విన్నవాడు వింటాడు, కొంతమంది ఐఏఎస్ ఆఫీసర్ మంచి వింటారు. At least we should highlight that. That is my observation on this point.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Raj Francis garu.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, your comments, please, observations.
I'm actually very overwhelmed with the information, so I think it's better I just absorb it at the moment. So
Okay.
I don't have anything much to say at the moment.
Sujata garu.
ఇంకొక పాయింట్ ఐ వాంట్ టు హైలైట్. ఇప్పుడు నేను ఉండేది ఇప్పుడు మణికొండలో. ఈ చిన్న చిన్న బైలేన్స్ లో కూడా ఎవరైతే ఈ 5 floors వేసి 15 houses 20 houses కట్టే ఇంటి కూడా ర్యాంప్లు వేసేస్తున్నారు. ఉన్నది 5 feet 10 feet రోడ్లు, ర్యాంపే ఒక 5 మీటర్లు నా ఇంటి నుంచి ఉంటుంది, ఆపోజిట్ నోడ్ వచ్చేస్తుంది. నిజంగా ఏదైనా ఈవెన్ ఒక వాటర్ ట్యాంక్ వచ్చినా కూడా అది 2 ర్యాంపుల మధ్యలో నుంచి రావాల్సి వస్తుంది. వీటికి బాధ్యత ఎవరు? ఈ ర్యాంప్స్ ఇలా వేసేస్తారు కార్లు వెళ్ళడానికి. అది ఈవెన్ దో సెల్లార్ ఉన్నా కూడా బయట ర్యాంప్ రోడ్డు కిందకి వేసేయడం, తర్వాత సైడ్ లో కట్టేయడం, ఒక డ్రెస్ లా కట్టేసి దాంట్లో చెట్లు ఇట్లు పెట్టేసి ఉన్న 5 feet 8 feet దాన్ని మళ్ళీ ఆక్యుపై చేసేస్తుంది. దట్ ఇస్ రియల్లీ వెరీ హారబుల్ సిచ్యువేషన్ ఇన్ ద ఇంటీరియర్స్ ఆఫ్ ద కాలనీస్. వాటిని మనం హైలైట్ చేసి షుడ్ నాట్ హ్యాపన్. అది నా బిల్డింగ్ అనేది కానివ్వండి, ఎవరిదైనా కానివ్వండి, షుడ్ జస్ట్ లీవ్ ద రోడ్. మళ్ళీ ఈ డిగ్గింగ్ చేసే వాళ్ళు ఏంటి, ఎలక్ట్రిసిటీ వాళ్ళు, డ్రైనేజ్ వాళ్ళు వచ్చి వాల్ డిగ్ చేసి వెళ్ళిపోవడం. దిస్ ఇస్ సచ్ ఏ న్యూసెన్స్. అసలు మెయిన్ రోడ్ మీద వెళ్ళడానికే స్ట్రగలింగ్. దిస్ ఇస్ ద కండిషన్ నాట్ హియర్, ఈవెన్ ఇన్ సంతోష్ నగర్. మా ఇంట్లో అక్కడ ఉంది సంతోష్ నగర్ కాలనీలో, అక్కడ అంతే, ఎక్కడ చూసినా అంతే. హూస్ రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ ఫర్ ఆల్ దీస్ chaos created on the roads? That's my point.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Sujata garu. Okay, Nagesh.
Sujata garu.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, Professor. How are you, sir?
Fine. You want to add anything?
Some questions, because recently we had like rains in Hyderabad. Okay, and when it rains, we can visualize the situation in Hyderabad, right?
Right.
So when you talk about this, rains and all, even everything is slogged, sir. Everything was rampant. Everything is slogged in areas, and especially I stay in RTC crossroads. Though we could find that even debris were slow, like were on the road and all. Everything was stagnant. The crossroads also even. Do you think that even the metro has helped in slogging the road, water and all? And the metros is helping during rainy season also?
Yeah.
Question.
Anant Garu, would you like to answer?
That's a hard question because would the metro have helped actually in
In
Aggravating.
no doubt. Yeah.
aggravating the flood, in reducing the flood?
Yes,
I don't
Professor.
know. I think, see, the metro is another element in an already messed up road for us. What happened actually is that in many locations, the road geometry has not been taken into account while designing the metro landing. So as a result, what happens in all of those places is a huge amount of waterlogging.
Right.
But that is not new because of the metro. It is something which has happened across the city in a number of places anyways. So take for
Right.
example, all of the medians
Right.
on the road around the KBR Park
Mm.
or in many other places actually in the city, when you have a good rain, somebody or the other either goes and breaks the median or the median breaks on its own.
Right.
And that is because the water is supposed to flow and we have blocked it. Right? And this is a situation which happens in about 1,000 places in the city. That is the traffic police's calculation. In fact, the most interesting thing in Hyderabad is that the most up-to-date flood information and the most up-to-date quickest response to the flood or waterlogging in the city is not from the municipal corporation, it is from the traffic police. Because they have to make sure that the traffic keeps moving.
Right.
They have the most detailed map of waterlogging in the city. And every one of them has to do with a faulty geometry of the place where we have actually blocked water from flowing. So the metro would have added in some places to that bad situation.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sir, I think Purushottam sir is mute. I have a question actually.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, please.
Yes, this is to Mr. Anant. So basically, my understanding is that if you take up all these projects all together, if it is relaying the whole drainage system and recalculating all the depressions, elevations, and all of it, if you take it from the point of view of the government, these are just projects in the waiting. So that again adds up to some potential projects for themselves. So what exactly is the element that is stopping the government from going ahead on basically passing these projects? Is it that they are too, in simple terms, too scared to rattle the people who are living in the damage zone? Or is it that it is going to extend their term of governance, that is why they are not bothered to do it? Or what is the reason that, what is the metric by which they measure this whole problem?
Okay, that's a very good question. Let's step back and think a little bit about this. Number one, how does the government actually understand this problem? Okay, if you look at, and we have actually done a careful content analysis of news reports around monsoon time over the last several years, okay? And there are a set of common themes that always come up. First theme, it's 100-year-old system, right? It's as if nothing has happened in the last 100 years. We always keep saying that we have 100-year-old system and that is why we have a problem now, right? That's actually not true. The 100-year-old system was limited to a small part of the city. The rest of the city grew after that or beyond that. And when we built the city, we did not put in place any system at all. That's the problem. The problem is not that we have an overloaded old system. The problem is that we have built enormously beyond the limits of that, and just at the point where it is supposed to go into the river, that is where it gets choked a little bit. But there is another problem here, right? Which is that some of this infrastructure is actually terribly expensive. It's not easy to put an underground sewage system. It costs money. And our governments actually do not have that kind of money, right? Think about the Hyderabad area. The best kept secret about Hyderabad area is that very little of it actually has underground sewage, right? We built it. We built it because what we did is to say that, okay, here is the plan, here are the permissions, you go ahead and build it. We don't have money to put in place the necessary infrastructure. We will see as we go along. As a result, what happens is sometime in 2000 kind of time, or 2002, we made an assessment of how many sewage treatment plants, 19 or so were identified, and each of those was given a certain capacity depending on what we assumed would be the level of construction around it, right? Now see, basically what happens is sewage and grey water are the only two things where we seriously believe in science. We believe in gravity when we have to deal with sewage and grey water, because we know that we take it out of our building, throw it somewhere, and it will follow gravity and go somewhere else. That is the only thing. And so what happens is it goes into the nala and it goes into the nearest tank. And that tank gets filled with sewage, right? I can tell you, and Mr. Subbarao can tell you, so many tanks in the city of Hyderabad, which were basically wetlands. They were not meant to be deep tanks and lakes. But now they're all filled and overflowing with water because they're receiving huge amounts of sewage. That's the water that's going into it. It's not actual natural drainage that is going into it. Throughout the year, you have sewage going into it. And this sewage is several multiplying factors above the capacity of the sewage treatment plant that we have built. Now imagine how a sewage treatment plant of this kind works. This technology is operated by electricity. You turn off the pumps for half an hour, you're going to get sewage into your tank because it will bypass the sewage treatment plant. Where will you keep it? You'll have to let it go, right? Into that, you are sending in 3 times its capacity. Okay. So building this infrastructure, the underground infrastructure, then the sewage treatment plant, then all of this stuff is money. On top of it, we are also now saying that we have floods happening here, and for that you need to find a solution. And if I were a farmer, what would I do? I would try to find the cheapest possible solution. Right? That is how a farmer's mind works. It works in terms of trying to find the most economical way of dealing with a problem. Right? He'll try and say, okay, so I'm going to follow the gravity here, I'm going to follow the gradient there, I'm going to deal with this particular soil in this particular manner, I'm going to put some plants, this is how I'm going to deal with it. Right? That if you are a civil engineer, with commitments to systems of contractors, with commitments to steel and cement industry, what would you do? You would try to build as much as possible, right? So as a result, what happens is you talk about dealing with a flooding problem in an area, unless you can come up with a proposal that is at least 10 crores, it makes no sense from an engineering point of view, right? So then you put all of this together, the government actually does not have money, and that's the plain truth. But do you really need of doing it? But if you do these things in other ways, then how will you keep the engineering system going? This is the problem.
Shall I add something to Anant?
Yes, please.
Hello?
Yes,
I would
please.
like to add what Dr. Anant was saying. Raj, are you there? Raj.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Number one is the bureaucrats of 90s. They were so arrogant because I closely worked with the bureaucrat who was responsible for high-tech city growth first. Okay. So I asked him, sir, you are doing everything, but you are not looking into stormwater and sewage. What he said, you can understand in Telugu, no?
Yes.
4 నెలలకు ఒకసారి పడే వర్షం కోసం అంతంత నాలాలు ఎందుకయ్యా అన్నాడు. Roads can take care of. These people were conditioned by the contractors. Okay. Number two, sewage. Sewage also they have not. This country neglected what is called the water infrastructure. What you see in Europe. Okay. Water infrastructure is never taken seriously. Though right from 365 days, 24/7, second to second, we worship water. And we say water is Mata. And what we do practically, we don't. But problems wise, why government cannot look this as a challenge and address it? They have neglected it. The monster has grown now. Okay? And today, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Anand, the government escalated the land values to get the revenue. Today, 1 square yard in Madhapur and Jubilee Hills is 1 to 1.5 lakhs. There is no government land left there. Okay? On either side of the road is a private property now. If I have to put up a stormwater drain of 10 kilometers of, say, 100 feet width, how much it's going to cost me for land acquisition? Okay? And then I have to push the private property on either side of the road to some 10 feet, pay again the land acquisition cost to them. And all this development happened under panchayat regulations. You go to Madhapur, you find, going towards Durgam Cheru, you find only 25 feet road. Can you imagine a city with 25 feet road, that kind of infrastructure and luxury apartments? Huh? So they developed everything in the panchayat system and grabbed it for the revenue under the municipal corporation. Today it is a land acquisition cost. Huge land acquisition cost. Okay. Number two, unlike the Europe, we do not have settlement regulation. This case study also in Madhapur, Durgamchar. One fine morning, somebody like me filed a case, there is no treatment system. You find all the treatment systems in the city, in the lake itself. Because lake outside is already sold to private properties. you do not have space to install a treatment plant. Number one. Number two, people already filed a case, you cannot put up an installation in the lake. High Court case is there. Okay? And number two, okay, I have only left with placing the number three is the backwater areas. Any technology functions for an optimal level, threshold. Like I designed for 50,000 to 2 lakh liters of sewage. Yes? Technology works. Okay, that is the range. Example. But by the time I complete this treatment plant, additional 20,000 liters structures are coming up. I cannot update this technology. Okay? So these are all, now the situation became so complex and real challenging, but unfortunately, as Anant also pointed out, the government is not able to come forward. The fact is, you have combined sewers. The fact is, I cannot extend the nalas and the streams. Okay? Under this condition, what kind of a technology would work? Okay, stop giving building permissions. Can the government do it in that particular area? We are heading towards a disaster because government wants votes. They do not want a livable city, sustainable city, bullshit for them. Okay? All this, how do we sell as a package? Today, I know 6 international bodies are working on different technologies. Not even a single pie is given to those them. They said, okay, prove your technologies. Okay? So this is the situation, and this situation has to change. People have to come forward, like Singapore. When the Singapore Prime Minister, he requested and appealed to the people, people came voluntarily and said, okay, you take this piece of land and do it. So land acquisition today, because the land value was enhanced by the government itself. Now it is in its own track. We need to work on this. So thank you so much, Raj. And Dr. Anant.
Thank you very much for the answer.
Dr. Anant.
Yeah.
Anant.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yeah. Mr. Raj is an young, entrepreneur, and I know him quite 15 years as an young boy and all. Mm-hmm. He went to France. He worked with startup groups and promoting the startups, innovations, and all. I feel Raj and Anant, you two can contact sometime and then come out with new innovations and strategies.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anna.
Sure. Yes, for sure, sir.
My job is to thank Dr. Anant. It was one of the finest lectures I have heard in recent times. And the beauty of this particular Hyderabad Democracy Forum is that Hyderabad very much needed such a facility, such a forum, where people can come and there can be free flow of ideas, free discussion without any fear or favor. And today, though the figure on the screen may be very less, but actually there is a lot of viewership on the YouTube and Facebook. And I'm sure in the days to come, this particular forum will be a wonderful facility which will ultimately amalgamate excellent ideas and lead this city towards sustainability. But I wish to also add a few points, not that you do not know, but it's customary to bring certain issues for discussion in the next meeting and so on. Basic thing is that Okay, right now we are in the thick of GHMC elections. Elections are very much needed and they should be periodic and automatically the date should be known. It should be by calendar, not on the discretion of the chief minister or the government. In fact, that is not the way. Elections by calendar is what we witness in several other democratic countries. We were discussing about conflict resolution. Now, the point is that conflicts are intentionally created in India. And here, for example, we were talking about the movement of the fire engines around the buildings and all that. Now, GHMC elections, after they are over, and when the entire GHMC is constituted, a mayor is elected, a deputy mayor will be there. Now, let us get into the powers of the GHMC. You know, there is a one of the powers that has been transferred to the GHMC is fire services. It is known as fire services. And the mayor of Hyderabad, he or she doesn't have the power to appoint the Director General of Fire Services. We have topics like public health. The mayor of Hyderabad doesn't have any control over the Gandhi Hospital or Osmania Hospital or other public hospitals in this city. Now, what can the mayor do, or what can the GHMC do? We talk about crematoriums, cattle ponds, slaughterhouses, small little things that have been given. Now, when we come to urban forestry, everybody knows that at least 30% of the area in the city, or even more, should be under greenery, under tree cover. Now, recently there was this attempt, and knows very well, the government of Telangana wanted to cut down trees on the periphery of the KBR park. Roughly more than 3,000 trees were sought to be cut. Thanks to the initiative of several youngsters who live in that area, highly educated, articulate, they took the lead and we all supported them. And the group named Hyderabad Rising, they did a great job. Finally, we all went to the NGT, we got a stay. Meanwhile, the agitation picked up. And for once, we see that Hyderabadis came together. We were also assisted by the Times of India editor. And people, Dr. Anant was there, Subbarao-ji was there, and several, Marisha Shidhar Reddy was there. Finally, we could create a reasonable pressure on the political system, and for the moment it is stalled. I don't think the state government has the guts to proceed. Now, these are all piecemeal attempts. In a democracy, eternal vigilance is the price we need to pay. And that's the reason we have created this particular forum, Hyderabad Democracy Forum. It is the brainchild of my friend B.V. Subbarao, and I'm sure in the days to come, people of Hyderabad, from different professions, activities, all ideologies, left and right, let us all come together and discuss the critical issues of this city. We know that disasters are waiting to happen. We know that in the days to come there will be more flooding. We know that the air over Hyderabad is highly poisoned because of the chemical industries all around. We know that garbage is being burnt. But then, okay, analysis is wonderful, but we also need to create the right kind of public pressure. And therefore, let us come together. We have a forum now, and our intention is to make it, spread over Hyderabad. in all the 150 wards and a minimum of 10 members from every ward. It could be 20, 30, 40, no problem. But the minimum representation should be 10. Out of them, there should be at least 40% women representation. And they should be advocates, doctors, environmentalists, policy makers. Then similarly, urban planning experts, architects, right, engineers. We want all these people, everybody to come together to converge. And again, to use my friend Subhana's language, convergence for sustainability. Yes, we all should need to come together, yes. But then for what? In order to make Hyderabad more sustainable, more livable, more affordable. Because in this city, the plight of the poorest of the poor is, it is alarmingly critical. And I don't think they can wait, they can continue to wait for the redressal of their issues. Therefore, let us continue the discussion. And for today, I thank our esteemed guest speaker, that is Dr. Anant, and the wonderful interaction given out by my friend Subbarao. So, and I thank our young Shiva Prasad Reddy, who is always eager to help. He is a committed Democrat. In fact, that's one of the reasons we are all rallying around Shiva Prasad. And this particular channel is promoting legal awareness. And he has been inviting the best of the judges and 2-3 former chief justices of different courts in the country are in the pipeline. And maybe after fourth, I think he's planning to invite them. So let us all come together, and with the kind of law colleges, we have nearly 18 law colleges in Hyderabad, and all the students are being roped in. So we are waiting for the elections to be over, and after that, our webinar should have a viewership of at least 1,500 to 2,000. I'm sure in the days to come we'll make it, and we'll all come together we have a noble cause. So let's all come together and make our city safe. Thank you, everybody. Subhana.
Thanks, Anant. Thanks, Shiv Prasad Reddy, Dr. Anant, and all
Thank
others.
you very much. Thank you very
Anant, Raj Babu, Raj Francis, and Sujata Garu, Balaswami Garu, KV Rao Garu. Thank you so much. Good night, and we'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.